So next up on my Disney reviews in terms of chronological order is Robin Hood from 1973. One Disney movie that I think gets forgotten by a lot of people unless they grew up with it. And I sort of grew up with this one, but this wasn't one I watched a lot. I don't think I owned it. I think my grandma had it, but I never owned it myself. So I never watched it constantly. And as an adult, though, watching it, it's an interesting watch because, again, I didn't watch it a lot as a kid. I did see it as a kid, but not a lot as much as the other ones. Now, the first thing I want to say real quick is that the opening song is awesome. It's so catchy, so memorable. It's really catchy with how they sing this song, where they sing Robin Hood and Little John are running through the forest, like that song. It's really, really incredibly catchy, and I always remember it. And that is one of the most memorable things. And the whistling in that song is such a memorable song. It is really, really memorable, that opening music with the credits. And again, these characters in this movie are all very colorful, and they're similar to other movies in this Disney time frame that Wolfgang Reitman directed. He directed, I think, almost every Disney movie in the late 60s, late 60s to late 70s. Because I know he directed this, he directed The Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The Rescuers 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, and Aristocats. So he did, I think, every Disney movie from like the late 60s to late 70s. So you could see there's a trend of, it's a lot of like cutesiness, and Disney does that in a lot of movies, but I noticed this director did that a lot, which is fine, because I don't dislike any of the movies he directed. They're just, this feels like it's one of the more forgettable eras, though, of Disney. One of the more forgettable decades, but still, it's got some good ones in it. Like this one. This one's good. These colorfuls are really fun and these characters are really fun and colorful. Wow. Like Robin Hood is this smarmy guy who's feeding the poor from the rich. Like, he is what he is in the story. Like, he except for he's a fox in this version, which is awesome. And Little John, who's a big bear. That's funny, having his name Little John, but he's a giant bear. That's awesome. And then Prince John, who's this really, really incredible, whiny, sissy, prissy villain, and I think he's really good and really memorable and really funny. And whenever he gets thwarted, he sucks his thumb. Like, that's pretty funny. And then Hiss, who's this fun snake lackey, who is essentially Kaa from the Jungle Book. Like, it's the same snake, basically, animation-wise. And Maid Marian and the kids are fun. But again, I want to go back to that animation thing, because Hiss is just like Kaa from the Jungle Book. And this is the era where Disney really suffered from not having as much money. Walt Disney died during this time, a couple years before this, and then the company like had to shield their resources in some way. And they didn't have enough money to do everything right in these movies from the late 60s, early 70s. They had one director do most of them. And the animation is recycled a lot. Like I said, with Sir Hiss, it's just Kaa again, the snake. And then there's scenes where they're doing the Jungle Book dance, but with different characters. Or the scene where Maid Marian dances, it's like Snow White dancing and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, it's literally the same animation, like, layout with that. It's just a different character inserted, which again is fine. It just shows that like they didn't have as much money or resources then in this time period where it was a low for Disney, and it continued to stay a low until the late 80s, until The Little Mermaid came out. But for a while it really suffered from being, they didn't have as many resources or money. Like, I know they had enough money to make these, but you could tell that this was a bad time for Disney, even with movies like this, which by this movie's definition, Disney considers this one a failure, I think, in how it was, like, it didn't make a lot of money, I think. From what I think it didn't make much money. And I really do like, again, with these characters, I do like how fun they are. I do like Robin Hood a lot. I do like how good of a character he is. And that scene with him and the orphans is really good because it just shows like he's pretending to be the blind guy, and whenever he gives them back money, like it's just a really good scene of your character getting like a real likability, and I really thought it was cool with that scene alone. And I mean, I like the whole movie overall, but the more memorable thing about the movie, besides the characters, is the last act where they are all going into Prince John's castle, castle grounds, and they go and quietly and stealthily take all the money. And I like how they do this. It's really cool. Where they put all the money in bags, they move them down, ropes going down from building to building, while they are slowly infiltrating and getting rid of all the guards. And it's really, really good in how suspenseful and quiet it is. And then whenever it hits the fan, we're like, Prince John realizes this, and all the guards are against everybody. Everybody in the movies, besides Maid Marian, is in this fight, and they all escape. But there's a great action sequence with Robin Hood being chased, but then thwarted, and then put on top of a pillar, and then everything is on fire. And it's a really, really actually suspenseful scene. Like, you know he's gonna make it out, but it actually works really well. Like the suspense level in that moment is really, really works. Like, I really did like how that moment really solidified that this, like, of course you know he's not gonna die, but it felt like, oh, he could die because he's like right there trapped on a pillar with no way to escape except for jumping off, and he jumps into the lake. But that is such a great scene, and the musical score in that moment is fantastic too. So I really love that scene, and for me, I do like this one a lot. It's just more, it falls more into the like middle of the road Disney rankings because I didn't grow up with it as much as a kid. I mean, I watched it as a kid a couple times. I didn't own it. And watching it as an adult, I do like things about it a lot, even though you can see the more flaws with it in terms of Disney, Walt Disney dying and then them not having as many resources. So it's unfortunate on that part, but this is still a really fun and likable movie. These characters are all fun and likable. The action is pretty good. The ending action sequence is really good for this movie. The animation is good, even though it's recycled. Some scenes, which is fine, but these characters are colorful. The action's great. The music's great. That musical cue at the beginning is so memorable. And I really like this movie. It's just not one that I want to watch all the time, but this is a really great, solid Disney movie, and it's one that a lot of people, whether you grew up with it or not, do still remember it. But it's just one that nobody thinks of first when they think of Disney, which is unfortunate. But it's still a good Disney movie. I still like it a lot despite some of its shortcomings. So that's how I feel about Robin Hood from 1973. Tell me down below what you think of this movie, and thank you guys so much for watching.